Benin. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock and we are live. Welcome to Detox. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. Well, did you know that your gut health directly affects your brain function? I had no idea about this, but our guest tonight is going to tell us how this is true, and he's going to help us solve these problems with his expertise. Every month I have Dr. Michael Wild on Detox. He is a chiropractic physician, a functional medicine practitioner, a certified cellular inflammation and detoxification specialist, and he is my very dear friend, and we love having him on because he is so incredibly smart. Dr. Michael Wild, welcome to Detox.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm telling you, you are like the walking billboard for great introductions. You make me feel good about myself. I appreciate it.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about shit.
You say it?
I told you.
We're going to talk some shit.
We're going to talk some shit. Are we? I have to thank you. First of all, I've actually had some people ask me lately, like, does he pay to be on Detox and all of this? And I'm like, absolutely not. He is someone that I truly believe in. You have absolutely helped me get my health back on track. I've had several situations recently where the doctors have failed me, and you have solved my issues by digging deeper and looking in to see what's actually causing these issues. And I'm so grateful. And I just want to share you with the world. So when I endorse you, it's because I believe in you and I believe in how you practice medicine. So I just wanted to say that right out of the gate.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I don't take that lightly, really. I joke around about it, but I really do appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to help you and to have faith in me to be able to be the one to do that. So I do really appreciate that. And as I've told you before, I really appreciate the opportunity and the platform you've given me to be able to share my information with the world.
Well, I think we're aligned. We want to help people. So however we can do that. And the other thing too, is that Michael has tests that are available that your doctors will not give you. You will not be able to get the detail level of information from the doctor that Michael provides. And it's so critical because those are the things that are determining what's truly wrong with you. So you're not having a Band-Aid on something.
You're exactly correct. And actually, we'll talk a little bit about some of the tests that we do that are different than what your typical doctor would do and why we do them and how they relate to, specifically tonight, we're going to talk about intestinal health. And as we were kind of joking around, I said it actually takes guts to be healthy and happy. And most people don't really understand the correlation. And so we're going to dive into that tonight. And we're going to talk about, you think about a lot of people recognize when they have certain symptoms that they might have a digestive problem or a problem with their intestinal system, things like heartburn or acid reflux or food sensitivities or recurrent diarrhea or constipation. And that's kind of an easy connection, right? We think, okay, that works down here. But what about when people get foggy thinking or autoimmune disorders or chronic bad breath or chronic fatigue or constant stress, feelings of depression or anxiety, menstrual irregularities? There's a number of things, thyroid disorders, poor metabolism in general, the ability to keep a healthy weight. All these things tie back into the health of your intestinal system. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail this evening about how that all relates and how you can determine if any problems you might be having might be related to your intestines, and most importantly, what can you do to correct that?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. So let's actually, before we dive into that, can you explain to our audience exactly what is a functional medicine doctor?
Sure. So that is a term that's kind of new to a lot of people. It's been in utilization, that term, for about 15 years, although it's only, I'd say, probably in the last 5 years that I've had a lot of people coming to me saying, I've been looking for a functional medicine doctor, which is, surprising to me when they actually understand what it's about. But functional medicine is really practicing medicine the way it was always intended to be. And what that means is it's not treating symptoms. It's actually looking at the balance and function of your systems. So from a functional medicine perspective, many different types of health practitioners can practice a form of functional medicine. Your traditional MD could do it. A doctor of chiropractic like myself could do it. A nutritionist, an acupuncturist. So it could be practiced by many different people in different ways, but ultimately we're all after the same thing, which is restoring optimal balance to the function of the many systems of your body, regardless of your symptoms. So we can make sure that everything's actually operating and communicating properly for optimal health and well-being.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for that.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It makes sense to me because I talk to you every month, but hopefully so.
Well, it's interesting because I kind of put in context when I explain to new people who come to my healing center that at my center, which is called Advanced Health Restoration Solutions, I combine 3 healing arts: chiropractic care, functional medicine, and biohacking. And chiropractic care also is often misunderstood by a lot of people. They think of it in terms of back pain or neck pain or headaches, because it certainly is really good at helping alleviate those things. But that's not at all what chiropractic was actually ever designed to be or to do. Chiropractic was always designed to help you heal well, not just to help you feel well.
Okay.
Right. And what I mean by that is chiropractors are basically, in effect, functional neurologists. We work with activating and balancing the nervous system for optimal communication between your brain and your body. And we do that through your spine because that's where your nervous system is. So I always joke around and say, if your nervous system ran through your nose, chiropractors would be nose doctors. Right. So we're not back doctors, we're nervous system doctors. Now you combine that with functional medicine, and now we're going to talk about balancing internal systems, organ and gland communication, cell-to-cell communication. So if we have body and brain talking well and cells talking to each other, the body heals a whole lot better. If you have interference to any of those areas, you don't heal as well, and ultimately you don't feel as well. So I combine those because there's a natural synergy between the two. And then I use
it's kind of like roadblocks or speed bumps going through if the pathways aren't open.
That's exactly correct, and that's exactly the terminology I use. I tell people that I'm not healing you, and no doctor heals you. Your body heals you, but the problem is there's a number of roadblocks in the way. So my job is to find them and remove them, so your body can actually do what it already knows how to do. Right? I mean, if you cut your finger and put a Band-Aid on it, the Band-Aid doesn't heal it. It keeps it clean, removing impediments to healing while the body goes to work. So your body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. And thank God we were born that way. But as human beings, we're really good at screwing that up. So there's lots of things we do on our daily activities and our daily lives that interfere with the function and the balance of our body's systems and our communication ability and our cellular systems. And so as a cellular healing specialist, I do focus my practice all the way down to the cellular level, the basic fundamental building block of life, the building block of every tissue, every organ, every gland, every system that you call you is the cell. And so we start at the cellular level and we balance that through chiropractic care and functional medicine. And then I use biohacking, which is using scientific tools and techniques to rapidly improve your health and performance, to speed all that process up, to shorten the learning curve for your body. So in my center, I have all kinds of cool tools and toys to play with that does that. But I also can teach people how to do certain things at home.
And that's your biohack gym.
Right. Exactly.
It's called a biohack gym or center?
The biohack zone.
Zone. Okay.
Right.
Got you. All right. So let's get into Our gut.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are four main jobs that your gut has, four main functions, right? Now, the first one is obvious to everyone, digestion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what your intestinal system or gut does, right? And when we talk about your gut and intestinal system, we're also including other organs and glands that are associated with that, like your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, your stomach. They're all attached to that intestinal system in various ways, and they're all part and parcel of digestion. So what does digestion mean? Well, we know we can put good food in our mouth, but you can eat the best food in the world, and it doesn't really matter if it can't get broken down properly into smaller pieces so it can be absorbed and assimilated into your cells for your cells to actually get fed by that food and to get nutrients and signals that tell the cell something to do, right? So that's all digestion. It has to all get in there, get broken down, get made bioavailable, that can then transfer across membranes into the cells and actually do what that food is there to do, right? Which is to replenish our tissues and provide us the nutrients and the vitamins and minerals in order to grow healthy tissue or enable a healthy function of the body, right?
Yeah.
Now, the second role of that gut or intestinal system is we got the good stuff in, now we got to get the bad stuff out. So elimination, right? Removal of waste. Because again, you could put all the best food in the world, you could break it all down, you can get into your cells, but then we have a process called metabolism, which is using those nutrients and then producing byproducts. If you burn wood for warmth, you get a byproduct of that, smoke.
Right.
The smoke is damaging, so we got to get that out, right? We want the heat generated, like burning the food for calories, which is actually measured in the form of heat. And then we have the smoke produced that has to be removed. So elimination is very important. We got to remove the toxins that are produced by not only our normal metabolic processes of everyday living, but the things that we ingest that we don't even know about, the stuff that's hidden in our food, the stuff that comes in our air and our water, stuff that gets absorbed through our skin, all these toxins. And there are about 90,000 toxins in current use in just our food supply and in our cosmetic industry and in the industry at large of interacting with things like plastics in our environment, part of everyday life. There are over 90,000 different chemicals that are in use out there. And you would think, well, they've all got to be safe for me if they're being put in our food or being allowed in industry. But the reality is that our government and the FDA has only fully evaluated about 5 of those per year. So there's the vast majority, the overwhelming majority is not evaluated for complete safety. And you have no idea what's going into your body. And most of it's damaging. And so we have to have proper elimination to get that out. And that works not only breaking down the toxins through our liver, but also then excretion through things like our kidneys and through our intestines and our bowels and through our sweat glands to get them out of our body, and actually through our breath even. Our lungs are a big portion of excretion and elimination. So there's always ways we pass it on, but the vast majority of it ends up in the toilet, right?
Yeah.
Food in, waste out. And so we have to make sure that elimination is working very well. So again, I think most people probably understand those two first factors and how the intestinal system is related to that. But the next two, most people don't have a clue about, right? So the next thing that your intestines does for you is control your immune function. And I know we've touched on this in some previous episodes, and sometimes we overlap information because it's so important. It bears repeating, and because these systems all overlap, right? We're not individual pieces and components. We are a combination, the ultimate end result of putting all those pieces and components together. So there's a lot of overlap. So our immune function, we think of our immunity in terms of things like our antibodies, right? We've heard a lot about that lately in the media, or our white blood cells, which we haven't heard so much about, but they're a big part of the fight against things like viruses, right? Or our ability to get rid of the toxins themselves as part of our immune system in cleaning things up and getting them out. But also our immune system is important for healing and repair of damaged tissues. So let's say you went to the gym and you worked out real hard, and the purpose of that was to break some tissues down in your muscles so they could rebuild and make them bigger and stronger. Well, your immune system is controlling that rebuilding, right? Your immune system is part of that tissue repair. Now, protecting us from bad guys or repairing damaged tissues and keeping us healthy, is about 90% of that is controlled by our gut. So we talked before about white blood cells, and they are our first line of defense against any bad guys coming in. They are the foot soldiers in our army. And about 70% of all the white blood cells your body produces lives inside your gut, inside a gut lining called the gastric-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT. And that is a mucosal layer, mucus, like sticky stuff, right on the top of the cells that make up the barrier between the inside of our gut and our bloodstream and the rest of our body. So we have a 1-cell thick layer and this mucus with our white blood cells in it. That's our protection. And those white blood cells live in there. And if something gets through that cellular barrier, the white blood cells have to determine, is that friend or is that foe? And if it's foe, I'm going to attack and destroy it before I let it into the bloodstream to get into the rest of the body. And if it's good for me, I'm going to let it get on through, right? So we have that important part of our immune system as well. And those white blood cells work in conjunction, hand in hand, with the bacteria in your gut, also known as your microbiome, in controlling immune signaling to the rest of the body. And so actually the bacteria in your gut, your good bacteria, tell your body how to respond from an immune perspective. It says, hey, this is what's going on here. This is what I want you to do. So we often refer to the gut as the second brain, because your gut is actually making a lot of the decisions before your brain actually is, and sending signals up to your brain so your brain can then re-regulate new commands for the body. But it's really amazing that a lot of this initial decision-making is taking place in your gut and by the bacteria in your gut. And that
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a wild system.
Right.
Really, most people don't think about this. Instead, they rush to a doctor for antibiotic every time they don't feel well, which is disrupting their microbiome, right?
Of course, yeah.
System, which ultimately makes them sicker and weaker. And you find the people who rush for antibiotics currently get recurrent rounds because their body's actually getting weaker over time. But how about the hidden antibiotics, the ones that are being shot up into the animal that you just ate? Right? In the beef, in the chicken.
Yeah.
So these animals are getting shot up with antibiotics and hormones that are damaging and changing the signaling within our own bodies. So you gotta watch out for that stuff, right? And there's actually a lot of that actually even in our drinking water, because most of the water treatment plants are not designed to eliminate the drugs that people dump into the toilet when they find an old bottle in their medicine cabinet and say, let me get rid of that. Well, that ends up going to the water system. And then when you drink tap water that's not been purified, you're ingesting those drugs, things like antibiotics and things like birth control and things like antipsychotics. There's a tremendous amount of those found in tap water when you look at them. Very scary stuff.
Wow.
Right? So you have to be aware of all this and try to keep your body on the up and up by keeping it purified, drinking purified water, eating clean food, eating organic food, avoiding the antibiotics and hormones and the added toxins, the added pesticides and herbicides that are sprayed onto the feed that the animals eat or directly onto the fruits and vegetables that you're eating. So this stuff is really important. You know, a lot of people kind of poo-poo it and go, what's the big deal? I'll eat whatever. That's how you get sick, right? Now, it doesn't always show up right away. It could take many years. A typical chronic disease like heart disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, any over 150 autoimmune dysfunctions, including hypothyroidism, cancer, Alzheimer's. These are all chronic diseases related to chronic inflammation of your cells that typically take between 5 and 15 years to develop, of your cells trying their best to fight back against this toxic environment that they've been put into, right? And eventually they lose the battle and things start to go wrong. Yeah. But almost all of that is mediated first by your intestines. So when people come to me suffering from those chronic disorders and people looking for help with optimizing their health against cancer or heart disease or diabetes or Alzheimer's or autoimmune dysfunctions, I often start by looking at their cellular health first, their toxic load or toxic burden, which is a burden to their immune system, and their intestinal integrity. So those are 3 things that you have to start with if you're ever going to be well. You can't just run to the end and treat the symptom. You're never really going to fix the problem. Make sense?
It does.
Right.
All right. Function, main function number 4.
Number 4, hormone balance.
Mm.
Okay. Well, what does hormone balance have to do with your intestines? Everything.
Okay.
There are 4 main hormones that are directly involved with intestinal function, which there are 2 stress hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine, helping to control your stress response, your anxiety response. And if your gut isn't well, those go out of balance and you can feel overstressed all the time. Like you have a very short fuse, you can feel very anxious, you can have a low like noise tolerance, like that you want that music turned down all the time so you just can't take it. You could be sensitive to light. So these are things that get triggered when your gut balance is off and your norepinephrine and epinephrine, which are very dependent upon those gut microbes again for proper balance, gets thrown off and overstimulated.
Wow.
Another thing that can happen is we know that we have a neurotransmitter, a hormone in our brain called serotonin.
Yes.
And serotonin is your happy hormone, right? And along with dopamine also helps to control things like anxiety and depression and happiness. And 90% of those hormones, serotonin, are made in your gut directly, in your intestinal lining. So again, helping intestinal health helps in depression, anxiety, right? Feeling of overwhelm, and keeping you happy. A happy gut leads to a happy brain, all right? Very, very important. There's also a direct connection, very direct connection between estrogen and your intestinal lining and the microbes within your gut again. And when we have problems with estrogen production or metabolism, it always involves the gut lining to some degree. So when women are estrogen dominant and they have hot flashes, right, going through menopause, they have breakthrough bleeding, they have night sweats, they have foggy headedness, they have short fuses again, they could cry at the drop of a hat. All this involves an estrogen metabolism. And that could be estrogen production or the breakdown of estrogen. Estrogen is actually very toxic to the body, and you produce very, very small amounts of it in a woman's entire lifetime. If you add up all the estrogen she ever made, it's equal to about 2 teaspoons. Okay. Really tiny molecular amounts. But you have to be able to metabolize that. It has a very important job to do, and it's involved with tissue growth, right? We know we have to have estrogen to have a proper period and egg production, and for a baby to grow, right? A fetus to grow, we have to have proper estrogen production. So when we go into menopause, all that gets disrupted and stops, and you can no longer have babies, right? But we go through a period where it's really up and down as we go through perimenopause, then for menopause, where you have all these crazy symptoms a lot of the time. And that's because your body's having a hard time balancing out this estrogen metabolism. And that often involves the health of your intestinal system. So if you're having hormone imbalance, especially estrogen problems, look first to your gut. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Now, estrogen also balances with another hormone. And you might notice when you're going through all that, if you are going through that, you don't sleep as well. And we often know what our sleep hormone is called, which is melatonin. And your estrogen also balances with your melatonin. And just as I said, estrogen also is a growth hormone. So we know certain things like certain cancers, like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, endometrial cancer, are very often estrogen dependent. And the more estrogen you have, the more it can make these things grow, right? Because it's a growth hormone. Well, melatonin does the opposite effect. Melatonin helps to keep growth in check. So melatonin isn't just a sleep hormone. It's involved with many functions. And one of them is stopping things from growing where they're not supposed to. So when I help people who are getting healthier related to the cancer that they're dealing with, one thing I recommend for them is use melatonin as a supplement, because it's been shown in research to stop metastasis of cancer.
Really?
Growing, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Right? And again,
do you recommend people take that anyway as a preventative?
They can. The problem is when you take anything unnecessarily, you could throw other things out of balance, right? So I always say,
I want to talk about that later, because and that's why I think it's so important to take these tests that you have, because there are people out there that are trying to help, of course, but it's a shotgun approach and just like giving everybody the same plan or just sort of based upon their symptoms, and it might not actually be helping them at all.
Veronica, you're exactly right about that. You hit that nail
Yeah.
right on the head, right?
Yeah.
People
And
can
I
change.
feel, I hate even saying it, but it's the truth. I mean, and I know this because I've been working with you for so long.
And it really is the
Mm.
truth. And it's frustrating to me, as is frustrating to the patients that I help, because they'll say, I've been
Yeah.
working on my own for years. I read this article. It said, do
Yeah.
this, it helps this. Or I read that.
And they're
Or,
trying, because they
right.
can't get what they need from the doctors. So
Absolutely.
they're trying to take matters into their own hands, or trying to find anyone to help them because they're frustrated, or they want to go a holistic approach. But,
Mhm.
they're trying all these things and it's not working. And it's because maybe they don't know what's really the root issue.
That's exactly right. So there's a lot of,
Mhm.
good, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So they're
Yeah.
trying, they don't necessarily want to be hooked on drugs. They don't want to be relying upon things they know that this chemistry can alter them and hurt them over time. So they're trying to do it naturally. But if you don't know
Mhm.
exactly what you're doing and what you really need to do, you really end up barking up the wrong tree,
Yeah.
And
Just enough to be dangerous.
exactly, exactly. Especially
Right.
get,
Right.
you
Yeah.
spin the wheels in the wrong direction. So it is
Mhm.
extremely important to do the right test. As a matter of fact, I may have mentioned this to you before, but the approach that I take, I call the 4 T's, right? And
Mhm.
the 4 T's stand for do the right test, target the right root cause,
Mhm.
treat that cause the right way, and then your body will transform into a healthier person, right?
Yeah.
So there's 4 T's for intestinal repair, as
Mhm.
there are for just about any other thing that's going in the body. Do the right test,
Yeah.
target the right problem, treat it the right way, and watch the body transform. Right?
Right, because at least if you know what you're dealing with, if you wanna take matters into your own hands, at least you know at least you know what's going on.
Right. So to
Right.
get back to your question of is it okay to take melatonin or other things on a regular basis? Yes and no, because
Mm.
a very little amount over time can shift things further out of balance, especially if you don't really need that. So it is important to measure appropriately, even for simple things. Like people say, how much vitamin D should I take? I say, well, that depends. How much do you need?
Right.
And they say, well, I don't know. I say, exactly.
You don't
Right.
know, so
You
they're
don't
just
know.
taking willy-nilly.
Right. And
And what happens when you take too much?
so if you take too much, it could be as harmful as not taking enough, right? So if you take too little, you don't make any change. If you take too much, you can overshoot your mark and produce some additional problems, right? So when it comes to hormones, and melatonin's a hormone,
Yeah.
and actually vitamin D is a hormone. We talked about
Mhm.
that on our vitamin D episode, right?
Yeah.
Vitamin D is actually a steroid hormone, and these hormones are chemical messengers. They tell the cell to do something different, right?
Yeah.
And so you can give it a good message or give it a bad message. So you don't want to just take these things willy-nilly, right?
Right.
You want to know exactly what's going on. And even if you do end up going for, say, bioidentical hormone replacement, in the case like we were talking about estrogen, you have to be monitored closely
Oh,
and
yeah.
get testing done regularly to make
Sure.
sure that you are within the target range you're shooting for, or else you could produce some very real, serious, more significant health problems for yourself.
Right.
Right. Now, that being said, even when you're taking melatonin, I do want to say, as I see a lot of people take way too much,
Mm.
you typically don't want to take more than 3 milligrams. Okay. Very, very small amounts.
What's the typical dosage that you would get if you got a
Well,
bottle of it? What do they usually say?
I see
Do you
people coming to
know?
me taking 10 milligrams a day, and that's really way
Okay.
too much for most people.
Okay.
Right.
Can that
Now,
cause the opposite effect?
it can. It can.
Okay.
Again, you can start screwing with your cortisol production.
Mhm.
If you're a man, you'll start screwing with your testosterone. If you're a woman, you'll start screwing with your estrogen
Mm.
by throwing things further out of balance.
Good
Okay.
to
These
know.
are all what we call a closed system, meaning when you change one thing, you ultimately change everything. Okay.
I can go to sleep in probably about 60 seconds, so I know I'm very, very lucky, but most of my
So,
friends are just they can't do it.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And melatonin may be important for that, or maybe not at all. It might
Yeah.
be restoring their intestinal integrity, right?
Yeah.
The pineal gland in their brain, which makes the melatonin, may be making just the right amount.
Mm.
But if their cells can't properly metabolize that and send the signals in their gut to tell other organs and glands in the body how to respond to that, then we're going to have a problem, right?
Sure.
So we need that intestinal lining to metabolize these hormones, manufacture hormones, break them down, get rid of them. Like I was saying, estrogen can be toxic. Got to get rid of it. And it helps the cells communicate with these hormones. And so you have to have all that working. And it all starts fundamentally with proper, what I call intestinal integrity, proper functioning of your gut system.
Okay. So, Michael, are there any non-obvious symptoms of poor gut health that you just wouldn't correlate with that?
Absolutely. So I'd say the number one thing that most people have is some degree of fatigue.
Okay.
Right. Now, not everybody has that, but I do see it a lot because think about this. If you can't extract the right nutrients for energy, or you can't get the waste out as well as you should, and that toxic buildup is taxing to your system, that draws your energy away, and that's fatiguing. If you can't get your hormones to work properly, right, your get up and go hormone is cortisol. It wakes you up in the morning and keeps you going as you need to during the day, but then it's supposed to balance out and go down as melatonin goes up, so you do get into a good sleep cycle at night. If these things are out of balance because your intestines can't work right, fatigue is a pretty common one that I see. The other thing, the other biggest thing would be weight gain that you can't get rid of, right? Especially belly fat, right? And we've talked about that on some previous episodes as well, about how that all ties in. But again, your intestinal function is also helping control your stress hormones. And when those go out of balance, then you're going to start to metabolize things differently, and you're going to start storing your fat as belly fat. So we see that. Also, your intestinal function relates directly to your thyroid function. And we know
and we noticed that on my test that I have a very high cortisol, and we're trying to figure out what's causing that. And then I had a thyroid scare recently. And so it's all, this is all very interesting that I was never barking up this tree at all.
Right. And you see how it's all intertwined, but you never realized it was.
No, not at all.
Right. And I find that most doctors never explain this to their patients. And even people who've been to a hormone doctor, an endocrinologist, will come to me and say, I explain this stuff to them, and they'll explain things they've been having going on. I'll say, well, that's obvious because you're doing this, this, and this. Therefore, that's going to happen. And so no one's ever explained it to me. No one ever explained how it works or why, the food I'm eating is breaking down to too much sugar, which in turn is stimulating not only an insulin problem leading to diabetes, but also a cortisol problem leading to excessive adrenal burnout, which in turn then leads to improper estrogen metabolism and weight gain, hot flashes, and abnormal thyroid metabolism, which leads to thinning hair, dry skin, getting weight over your entire body, brain fog. So all these things can relate back to, again, the gut.
Right. And you remember they were trying to schedule me for surgery to take out half my thyroid.
Yeah.
And we resolved that.
Right.
We shrunk my thyroid.
Pretty wild.
They were scheduling. They were like, we want to schedule you. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And now they're like, oh, we just need to monitor it now once a year. We went from surgery to monitoring it. And I don't think that took long. Was that 6 months?
Yeah, about 6 months. Yeah.
It was
the grand
I don't
scheme of
even think it was 6 months that I was working with you on that.
Right. That's a pretty short period of time. Right.
Right. I know I just can't stress enough how important this information is to people. I don't know. But all right. So we have this we did not cover.
The 3 Ps. I was just going to go to that. So I want to talk a little bit about, all right, we talked about testing, targeting, treating, and transforming, right? So I have a protocol, a program I created called the Transform to Thrive program. If you transform your intestinal health, your body is going to thrive. Your cells are going to thrive. You're going to enjoy life again, right? So the Transform to Thrive program, and part of that involves replenishing things like probiotics, right? And we've all heard that term before, but I talk about the 3 Ps because probiotics are the middle P. So what's the one before and what's the one after? And what are those things that people are not really paying attention to? Well, we have the first P is prebiotics. The middle P is probiotics. And the last P is postbiotics. So what the heck does that mean?
Tricky.
So prebiotics, you may have heard in terms of fiber is good for your intestinal tract, right? And we know fiber helps keep us regular with good bowel movements and the removal and excretion of the waste that we need to get rid of. So what does fiber do for us? Well, not only is fiber a bulking agent, and fiber comes in different forms, soluble and insoluble. And soluble you can break down, insoluble you can't. So we need both kinds for different reasons in our intestinal system. Part to bulk up our stool so it's not watery and we have some solid material to get rid of. But the most important part there, in my opinion, of fiber is to feed the bacteria that live in your gut. And that's what prebiotic fiber is. It's the food that your bacteria thrive on, right? And these are things like certain forms of sugars, like FOS, fructooligosaccharides is one, or inulin is another form of a sugar.
Okay. I don't have these on my banner. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I would never be able to spell them anyway.
Another one that
you're so smart. I'm like, I know everyone else is like, oh,
it's just big words. But
that's all right. Go ahead.
So another one you may have heard of is chicory root, and sometimes you'll even see that in your yogurt container if it's a more of a natural yogurt, not one of the more commercially generated ones. You'll see sometimes chicory root or inulin in there because they're trying to give the organisms something good to eat. Now let's talk about yogurt for a second because everyone's like, oh, probiotics, yogurt. I've heard that there's probiotics in yogurt, so I eat yogurt every day. Isn't that great? And I say, well, how many grams of sugar are in that yogurt that you're eating, right? Because most of the commercial
yogurt. What did the cow eat?
Yeah, right. So multiple factors go into this equation, right? So the first thing I think about is the sugar content because most of the yogurt we like to eat are the fruity blends, right?
Delicious.
Delicious, absolutely, right? And the problem is they contain a lot of sugar. Yeah. And that sugar is inflammatory to your gut lining and starts causing problems with your microbiome and causes all this imbalance we were talking about. So sugar is a big issue. As we've talked about on other episodes, sugar directly inflames your cells and destroys communication between cells. Certain forms of sugar, of course, are necessary. That's part of what your cells eat, which is glucose, but you're not consuming straight glucose. You're consuming fructose or sucrose. Yeah. Fructose is fruit sugar. And you think, oh, fruit, that's good for me. I should eat lots and lots of fruit. Problem is we eat way too much fruit for the most part as a society. And that much fructose is not good for us. We should eat fruit sparingly and it should not be the very sweet fruits. So what do we all love? We love the sweet stuff. We love papaya,
bananas,
melon, and banana, right?
Don't we put banana in our smoothie every single day?
Right. And bananas have lots of sugar, not a lot of fiber. Now, bananas do have benefits to them. They do have prebiotics in them. Okay. But I find that, again, we consume too many of them. So we take everything to the extreme, right? Where I have a fruit smoothie. So it's just loaded up with fruit, which just means I load it up with sugar. Right?
And it's delicious too.
And it's delicious too. It is, but it's overkill. Now, we also know that sugar has been, especially fructose. If you think about where else have I heard the word fructose? High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Right? So they took fruit sugar and concentrated it and made it hundreds, if not thousands of times more concentrated and sweeter, and then started putting it into all of our food sources because sugar is highly addictive. They're no dummies, right? They know if you eat or drink that, you're going to want more.
Yep.
Right? It's actually as addictive, if not more addictive than cocaine and heroin to certain centers in the brain.
I was at a birthday party the other day and I had a piece of cake, which I don't, I've stopped all that.
Yeah.
And after that, I was starving. And the next day I wanted sugar.
Yeah. Isn't
just
it amazing?
From one little piece of cake. And I knew, I was like, don't go down this rabbit hole.
And same thing happened to me. So last Monday was my birthday.
Yes. Oh, happy birthday. I forgot.
Thank you so much.
That. Yes.
And on my birthday, I said, hey, all bets are off, right? Why is it on what's on the days?
I saw that on Facebook. I'm like, he's eating pasta.
I was like, so I have this stuff like once, maybe twice a year, right? And these are the times I save up for it. So I'm like, I'm getting the pasta carbonara. I remember what that tastes like, And I'm going to have that with a piece of cake at the end, right? I felt so freaking bad. It was not funny. I mean, I literally broke into a cold sweat. Right?
Your body didn't know
what to nauseous.
Do. Yeah.
And it's like, why do we celebrate by hurting ourselves? It's the craziest thing, but that's, I think, human nature. And I'm not saying, you can do these things once in a while. It's part of enjoying life and being alive. But when we have this excess sugar consumption on a regular basis, especially when it's hidden in the form of things we think are healthy, then we consume a lot more of them thinking we're doing good, when in fact we cross a line, right? And so the little bits of sugar that are feeding the probiotics and good for us become overwhelming and create damage, right? And that causes a big spike of our insulin and cortisol, and that creates damage to our gut and damage to our cells. And that's what leads to faster cell death. And you've heard me say in at least more than one of our previous episodes, I believe, that if you want to age faster than any of your friends, consume a lot of sugar.
Right. Because
sugar damages your cells and ages your cells faster than anything else you could eat. All right. So keep it for the birthdays, keep it for the special occasions. And that just reminded me when I never let my kids have soda growing up, right? I mean, why would you consume and just drink straight sugar, right? It doesn't make sense. There's no reason to. If a kid never has it, they never know what they're missing. Give them flavored seltzer, give them pure water, give them watered down fruit juice, give them things that are healthier for them. Don't give them soda. And so my kids never had soda. Then my daughter, about the age of 8, went to a birthday party and someone gave her Sprite. She came back like a crack addict, right? Oh, yeah. I mean, her eyes were wide. She was bouncing off the walls and she's like, oh my God, I just had this magical elixir. I mean, she was hooked. Yeah. And we said, okay, we're not saying you can never have that stuff. Again, it's part of life, right? But only few and far between. You can only have it at birthday parties. So then every day she started bringing us a list of all of her friends who were having a birthday, right? And she said, well,
8 years old, they learn young.
Right, exactly. So she went down the list of everybody in her class because she wanted that sugar again.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, stupid little parent story, reminiscing. But
well, and getting back to the yogurt, so yogurt is good for you. So what does somebody do so if they want yogurt? What give us a healthy version of yogurt that they should have every day?
So you want plain yogurt, not sweetened yogurt. Okay, Greek yogurt's typically better. Typically has more live organisms in it, but even then, there typically is not a lot of probiotics really found in yogurt. If you read the label, you might see 3 to maybe 5 different strains, when in actuality, your gut contains thousands of strains. Okay. So you're not doing a lot of replenishing by getting the probiotics from the yogurt, but you are eating a fermented food that is more of a prebiotic.
Okay.
So the yogurt actually, and things like kefir, right? Or sauerkraut, kimchi.
Yeah.
Right. These things are fermented foods, even pickles, things that are pickled.
I love pickles.
Yeah, me too. Right.
Some people hate them. I
know
them.
My son doesn't like them. So I'd love to go out to eat with him because if he gets a pickle on the side of his dish, he's giving it to me.
Are you saying eat a pickle every day?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. There we go.
So all these things are beneficial because they produce a better prebiotic environment, which basically means it's creating a happy home for healthier probiotic organisms to grow and live. Okay. So that being said, prebiotics are the fibers and the fermented foods. Now, one little aside here, if you get bloated very easily when you eat, right? And even to the point where you feel like I might not be able to finish my meal, I feel suddenly so bloated so quickly, that could be a sign of something called SIBO, which stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that means that you have different bacteria living in different sections of your gut. And you have a small intestine, which is the first area your food goes through. And then you have a large intestine, which packages it for excretion and absorbs a lot of the water out of it, right? And gets it out. Different organisms live in those different areas, right? And they have different jobs. when we have an imbalance of the microorganisms in our large intestine, that lower part of the intestine, and the environment becomes an unhappy environment for the good bacteria, they'll move out. Okay. And they do a really wild thing. They develop wings and tails and fins that they never had before, and they'll swim out. Right?
Like a tadpole?
Yep, exactly.
Stop it.
Yeah. It's called flagellate production, right? So flagellates are organisms that have wings and tails, right? And these bacteria didn't have them before, but if the environment gets inhospitable for them and they're saying, this is not a good place for me to live, I'm going to be crowded out by these other guys, the bad guys are moving in, I'm moving out. So they sprout their fins and their tails and they swim upstream. Mm-hmm. And the bacteria from the lower intestine overpopulates the small intestine, that upper part. So you get small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And so the lower guys, the guys who produce gas, right? Because that usually comes out the lower part, right? Mm-hmm. But if that goes up into the upper intestine, then we get bloated really quick because we're producing a lot more gas from these bacteria that don't belong there. When that's the case, you have a really hard time breaking down those fermented foods typically. And so
how do you fix this?
My Transform to Thrive system does it very well.
You heard it here, folks.
Right. So there are specific steps, and I'll talk about that in a minute, about how to fix that. But
I think I have that.
So you very well may. It's a common problem to have.
And my stomach growls a lot.
So
it just growls like I'm not hungry, and it's just growling.
Right. That noise is called borborygmi.
What?
Right. And that's actually what it sounds like, right? You think about intestinal sound, borborygmi, right?
Okay. All right.
But that can happen when you're hungry, right? You notice your stomach might growl, but also it can make a lot of noise because it's having a difficult time digesting, right?
I have that. It seems to be worse now than it ever has been.
So there's different layers to this whole process, like we were talking about. And I've talked before about the different steps to my cellular healing cycle. And we talk about reducing inflammation and reducing toxicity. And we also talk about rebalancing the function of the gut. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of this part of the stage we're getting to with you, right? So we haven't really gotten into that yet. Yeah. But when we start to work on that, that's going to take care of that for you, right?
Oh, fantastic. I hope everyone listening, I mean, you guys all need to be listening to this man. Honestly, you will never get this at the doctor's office.
Usually not, you know.
No.
Very rarely do I find anyone has ever told me that all these steps and how they're all intertwined has been explained to them properly, so they understand the sequence in which things need to be done.
Yeah.
And why steps need to be done that take time, right? Yeah. Even if you fast tracked it, the fastest you could do this would be 6 months.
Right.
Right. But more typically, this stuff takes 6, 12, 18 months to really correct and properly balance for long-term health and functioning.
Yeah.
Right. It took a long time to develop. It takes time to correct. There's no way around it. Right.
Sure.
So sometimes we have to be very specific and take one step and wait till that step's complete before we go on to the next one, because maybe we're really, really out of balance there. Oftentimes, though, we can start layering these, and that's where we go from 18 months down to 6 months. It just depends on what's happening with you as an individual. So we have to evaluate you properly and see what your needs are. And if certain areas of your system are really, really dysfunctional, we have to address that fully first, because then the other things can't work as well if we try to layer them. Right?
Right. And again, it just goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the show, is that, until you actually really know what's going on with your body, you can't fix it with, just a blanket approach. Like, oh, I'm going to have probiotics. I'm going to eat yogurt. I'm going to detox. Okay.
Right.
There's a lot to this, and it's based upon the individual. And though
Exactly.
I'm definitely love the fact that people are trying to get healthy, and they're craving this, right? They understand that our medical system is failing us. And so I'm so excited that people are doing it. I just want to make sure they're doing it the right way and at least have the proper information, so then
Right.
they can tackle these issues and correct it properly and be amazing and healthy and live forever.
And I agree, because I'm not as worried about them hurting themselves from doing it wrong. I'm just more worried about them not getting results, right?
Right.
And getting frustrated and just giving up. And
Sure.
that's sad. I
Yeah.
don't want to see that happen, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about finding out what's going on and what's the right testing to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sure.
So when it comes to your intestinal health, right, and your gut health, the two main things that we test right off the bat are the digestive end and the immune end, right? So we talked about those four functions of the intestines, and we ultimately may get into looking at your hormone balance, right? And looking at your elimination and ability to detoxify. But first, we look at the digestive and immune ends, because those are the two largest things. We have to be able to make sure that you're going to get proper nutrients in without further irritating the system, and be able to get the fuel you need to produce the energy for everything else to work the way we want.
Yeah.
And we want the immune system to work right, because 90% of it's controlled by the gut. And if that's not right, everything's going downhill, and you can't heal and repair properly, and you succumb to illnesses like viruses, right? So we want to make sure those two things are working first and foremost. And those are the most common areas related to your diet and food as well.
Right.
So when you're eating, we want to know, can you digest the food you're eating well? Are you absorbing nutrients from that well? If you can't digest it well, does that food then get broken down into chemistry that's more inflammatory and more damaging to your gut and prolonging this problem? And the different bacteria in your gut determine all of that. So you and I could eat the
So
exact
you can
same
eat something that is considered the right thing, and your body's not breaking it down properly, and
Exactly.
it's actually not helping at all.
Because the bacteria and the fungi and the yeast and the archaea and the different protozoan organisms that live in your gut, their job is to break this stuff down and metabolize it. But if you don't have the right balance in there, you can't do that job really well, right? So there's something called microbial diversity. And as I said before, there's thousands of strains, or should be thousands of strains. And it's been estimated that 80% of the population has less than 20 strains when they analyze their gut. So about 80% of the population is not metabolizing their food and digesting their food as well as they should. And they're typically creating more inflammation and disturbances without even realizing it, because they may never have a gut symptom. They may never have a recognizable, what they would consider a digestive symptom, like acid reflux or heartburn or nausea or constipation or diarrhea. You don't necessarily have to have those symptoms, right? But you and I could eat the same food and get completely different nutrients out of that food based on who's living in our gut. So the first thing that we do is a stool test that looks at what you can digest and what you can't digest. And what's the balance of your microbiome, and how diverse is your microbiome? And is there chemistry being created that's leading to more inflammation, that's leading to something called leaky gut, where that one cell layer thick I was talking about, that with that mucosal layer, if those cells start to separate because of inflammation and the presence of certain chemicals, then that's going to cause a space that bad guys can slip through and undigested food can slip through. And when that happens, you start developing things like food sensitivities, right? So at first, you maybe don't digest it as well. It creates irritation, that creates a leak. Then the food starts dropping through, and now it starts to stimulate the immune system from those white blood cells that live there, as well as certain antibodies. We have antibodies called IgA, IgG, IgM that also live in that membrane. There's a particular one called secretory IgA that is the predominant antibody found in that mucosal layer, that is a very strong layer of defense along with your white blood cells to keep you safe from bad guys getting through. Because how do most bacteria and viruses get in our body and make us sick? Through the big hole we have, right? So it goes down in there, and this whole system is supposed to recognize it, kill it, destroy it, get rid of it. But if this is out of balance and we have a leaky gut and this stuff starts getting through, it disrupts the whole system, right? So everything starts to go off. Well, if food particles drop through and they get irritated, or they irritate, I should say, the white blood cells there because your lining is off, well, then you're going to develop something called food sensitivities, right? And that shows up on an immune system test, which is a blood test. And then an immune system test measures the white blood cell reaction against these food particles and the IgA, IgM, IgG, all those antibodies. We measure their reaction against food particles because they should not react at all against food particles, right? Food is food. Food's not an enemy.
So you're saying that, I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So you're saying that people that have food sensitivities might be able to resolve this if they resolve their leaky gut?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we do with people all the time. Right. It takes between 3 and 12 months.
So they're not eating these foods. They're staying away from these foods because they have food sensitivities, and just constant elimination from their diet when all they had to do is fix their gut.
Correct. Right. Because if you don't fix your gut, let's say you eliminate those foods because you know that those are fueling the fire. You know, those are bad guys. They definitely cause you distress one way or another. And again, those symptoms can be few and far between. You could get fatigue, you can get headaches, you can get mucus production, sinus congestion, you can get rashes, you could get gastrointestinal upset, you could maybe not sleep as well, right? So, and a lot of times these things don't show up for 2 or 3 days after you eat the offending food. So it gets really hard to often pinpoint where it's coming from.
Sure.
That's why the blood test really helps quite a bit, because we can see right away where your immune system is reacting against a food particle when it shouldn't. And so we can tell you, all right, we've identified the foods that are fueling your fire right now. So yes, let's avoid them. But while you're avoiding them, we also have to go through a process of healing and repairing the gut lining that's been damaged.
Right.
That's what the Transform to Thrive system is based on, right? That Transform to Thrive system I created is a 3-month process of using very specific supplements while avoiding the foods that we've identified on both your stool test and your blood test that we know are going to create more problems for you. So we only eat those foods that we can digest and get nutrients out of the best. And we only eat those foods that do not create more inflammation or alter the biochemistry in a bad way in your gut lining. So you stop fueling the fire and you get the best nutrient value. And now we have a window where things are no longer being set ablaze, that we can go in there, send the firemen into the building because the fire got put down enough that they can actually enter and get in there and actually go to work repairing. Right. And to repair that involves not only probiotics, but it's very heavily enzyme driven. And that's one thing that people don't pay attention to. So enzymes are chemicals that your body utilizes. They're forms of proteins that your body utilizes to stimulate a reaction within the body. They're commonly called catalysts. They may be used to start a process or to stop a process. So they're also known as rate limiting materials, right? So if they're going to make something go faster or make something go slower. So the enzymes are going to help that. So we have enzymes for digestion. We have enzymes for immunity. We have enzymes to clear out inflammation debris, right? And oftentimes our body is using the same enzymes just in different ways. So the same enzymes that come from our pancreas that our body might use for digestion are also used to digest inflammation, right? So if you take those close to eating, they'll digest your food. If you take them between meals, they'll break down bioproxy inflammation and help tissues repair and heal. So you can use enzymes in many different ways. And there's certain enzymes that are targeted for certain purposes. So in my Transform to Thrive system, it's actually a 3-month boxed set of 3 separate boxes containing 4 to 5 different supplements in each box with specific dietary recommendations to follow for each stage of the process. So there's a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 over 3 months. And that has been scientifically proven in studies to repair and heal the leaky gut and to allow better cellular communication in your gut, to help balance your hormones, to help improve your immune function, and help improve the ability for your body to absorb your nutrients and eliminate your waste, which is ultimately what we're after.
Yeah. And you can see results, you said, in 3 months, you can start seeing results.
You actually will see the results even sooner than that, but it'll take about 3 months to complete that process.
And what kinds of changes will you see?
So you'll start seeing that you'll start to feel better, right? You'll have more energy. Your skin will start to look better and be healthier. Your hair will be better. Your nails will be thicker and stronger. You'll sleep better. You'll have better hormone balance overall, so better fat and weight metabolism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Better emotional stability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you were having digestive symptoms like constipation, diarrhea, things like that, you'll see those clear up, right? So this is a portion of what I use for my irritable bowel program as well for my patients who suffer from things like that, like chronic diarrhea or chronic constipation, or a mix of both.
Yeah,
Right?
I have a friend that, and I'm hoping she'll reach out to you. She had talked about it, but she is definitely like she is just her whole life she's just been constipated,
Yeah.
and I can't even imagine how uncomfortable that must be.
It's very
And
important.
everything she tries, she's drinking water every day. She drinks, coffee. She's tried just everything to try and fix that. So that is so this might be something that would be good for her.
Absolutely. And it could be more complex than just getting more water, right? So certain hormone imbalances, again, it's all like a catch-22. It all comes full circle. So if you irritate the gut and disturbs, let's say, the ability of the thyroid to function, when thyroid hormone becomes dysfunctional, constipation results from that, which further irritates the gut, which further affects the thyroid, right? That in turn.
So it could have to do with thyroid.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
I
things.
know she'll be reaching out to you. I'm sure she will.
And a lot of your followers have reached out to me, and I really, appreciate the opportunity to be able to help them. And because they're always surprised when they realize that I can help people all around the country, and that everything we do can do virtually, and we can have Zoom meetings or phone consults, and I can mail test kits to you, and I get the results, and we never even ever have to see yourself face to face.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just got this comment. If you read this, this is someone I know that moved to Florida. Nikki, if you're listening, Michael and I have never met in person.
Right.
We have mutual friends. We chat all the time, obviously. He's my doctor. We've never met in person, and he's changed. He's changing my life. So you don't need to go to his office, though. I hear it's pretty cool.
I think so.
I hear your biohack gym is very, very cool. I will get there.
I know you
will. But I don't need to right now. Like
you don't,
it's
right?
Wonderful.
I can do everything as we're doing this right now, right? So Nikki, I'm not in Massachusetts either. I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I said, I have clients all around the country, right? I even have some in some foreign countries, but it's a lot easier to work with people in our country, right? But we never actually have to meet face to face physically. We can do all this online. If you are local to Richmond, come on in and get to play with some of my biohacking tools, and we'll get you better even faster, right? That's a cool aspect of that, but not necessary.
Wow, this is really incredible. What about pancreatitis? Is that related to gut health?
Absolutely, right? So pancreatitis can come from different reasons. Traditionally, we think of it in terms of being affected by alcohol, and alcoholism can cause acute pancreatitis. And that's only one thing that can do that.
Yeah, well, what if alcohol isn't involved?
Right, because often it's not, right? Same thing with fatty liver disease, right? We used to only associate that with alcohol.
Right.
And even as far back as the 60s and 70s, we started to see a lot more fatty liver disease. And today we have more than ever. And doctors used to believe that anyone who presented with that was a closet alcoholic, because they would say, no, I hardly drink. They're like, sure you don't, right? Because they only saw it that way. Well, what happened in the 60s and 70s? What changed? We said before, we talked about high fructose corn syrup.
Okay.
That's when that was introduced. And fructose, which is fruit sugar, is the number one cause of fatty liver disease.
Interesting.
Right? And fatty liver disease, like pancreatitis, can come from overwhelming inability to metabolize the consumption of sugar your body is being hit with. Right?
And be clear about that. It isn't like you're putting sugar in your coffee.
Oh, no,
sugar
no.
comes from what?
Right. It's the hidden. Thank you for making that point. because we may say, well, I never add sugar to my stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sugar, all carbohydrates break down to sugar, especially simple carbohydrates break down faster, right? All
Pasta?
protein, pasta. My
Pasta.
carbonara I had,
Carbonara.
that's why I broke into cold sweats, right?
Orange juice.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't drink juice, right? Because juice is just basically sugar water, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather get my nutrients elsewhere without all the sugar,
Mm-hmm.
right? Greens juice is different. I'm talking about fruit juices,
Yeah.
right? Greens juices are very low sugar, and you want to keep all the pulp in there, all the fiber. You want that, right? And if you
What
are going to
about,
drink fruit juice, you keep the fiber in it.
I don't eat meat, so I'm throwing this out there. What about your processed sandwich meats?
Right. So
What's in there?
All protein breaks down to sugar, ultimately too. All protein breaks down to glucose, slower than the carbohydrates. The carbohydrates break down the fastest, and grains, things you would make flour from, like wheat, oats, barley, rye, that breaks down to the most sugar the fastest and is the most damaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
But commercial meats are even more detrimental because they are shot up with antibiotics and hormones. They are processed, right? Cured meats, things that have been chemically added to, deli meats, things like that, right? Cold cuts. These things are highly processed and really not in their natural form at all. And the more processed the food is, the more damaging it becomes to your intestinal system. Right? Now, I am a meat eater, and when you eat organic meat, it's a very different process. It doesn't have any of that chemistry in it, doesn't have any of that bad stuff. Those animals, you want grass-fed, right? Natural forage for these animals. So they're not being force-fed grains that have been treated with a lot of crap. And then you're eating that, so you're getting the byproduct of that, right? So the nutrients and the chemistry that comes from an organic steak is very different than a steak raised from a cow raised commercially, right?
Sure.
And the dairy coming from an animal, same thing. Dairy coming from an organic animal is very different than dairy coming from a commercially raised animal, shot up with antibiotics, hormones. And we've talked before about glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is so very damaging to your intestinal tract. It destroys your microbiome and acts as an antibiotic.
And just so people understand what they're doing with Roundup, because once you tell them, it will terrify them. Because I think there's, some misinformation. I think people think, oh, they're spraying for weeds or something. What do they do with the Roundup?
So what Roundup's actually doing is just killing the microbes in the soil. And the microbes are necessary to take the minerals from inorganic matter like rocks and convert it into a form that then puts it into the roots of the plant in an organic form, which your body can absorb and utilize. So you can't bite a rock and get the minerals out of that, right? But you can eat a plant that was grown in the soil with the rocks, which absorb the minerals, but the microbes is what made the absorption possible. And what glyphosate does is it kills the microbes. So,
and isn't that how they dry the wheat?
Right. So they use glyphosate in many different ways. So glyphosate was originally an industrial chelator. It was designed originally to clean the mineral buildup out of industrial pipes. So it ripped the minerals out. It does the same thing to your pipes, your intestines. Right. When you eat things that have been sprayed with glyphosate, it's binding to and chelating, which means ripping out your minerals. And you need minerals, people, right? Your vitamins don't work without minerals. Minerals are probably even more important than the vitamins are. And we all know how important our vitamins are, right? They can't work without the minerals, and glyphosate pulls them out. Glyphosate was then found to be a great antibiotic. And that's when they started using it as a herbicide and pesticide, right? Now they also use it for a process called desiccation, which means drying. But it doesn't really dry, it kills. So instead of drying, it's dying. And it's killing the wheat that it's sprayed on to make this big, thick, strong, healthy stalk become really weak and crumbly so they can use a thrasher machine to come out and cut it down and collect it without clogging up the machinery. So when they grow wheat, well, first of all, in today's wheat, about 95% is genetically modified, and there's all kinds of crap added to it that you don't want to know about that makes it 7 times stronger in gluten, which makes it basically something foreign to your body, so your immune system gets fired up. That's why so many people are gluten sensitive nowadays. It's also
not to mention all the stuff that gets in the machine, because I have horses and sometimes the hay,
yeah,
all kinds of dead animals in
it's
there.
not pretty, right? All that
No,
stuff that gets
snake,
mixed up in there,
birds,
right?
we've had baby deer, like
Oh,
oh yeah, like small, like,
all right. Let's
yeah,
change the topic.
I know, but that's what's happening when the machine goes in and grabs the wheat.
Right. So the machine gets gunked up, right? So if they
Yes.
kill the plant
So gross.
by dousing it with a heavy dose of glyphosate, which will kill the plant
No.
because it can't get the minerals,
Hmm.
right? When they do that, then that's going to make it easier to harvest. So then they strip it down and you get the glyphosate laden wheat. Good for you. Congratulations. Right. So it's very damaging. And that our regulations here from the FDA allows much more glyphosate. 75% more glyphosate is allowed in our food stock than it is in Europe.
And
Right?
why is that?
Money talks. So the food industry basically pays off the FDA to look the other way. That's the reality. Right? But it's interesting because, and we may have mentioned about this in one of our previous talks, but the reason they started to find out that glyphosate was very damaging to intestines, not only do we know that it damages the microbiome and kills off the good bacteria that you need to break down your food because it acts like an antibiotic, just as if you took antibiotics, also bad for your gut, right? But it was also found to destroy the thickness of the intestinal lining itself. That mucosal layer that's so important with that secretory IgA to defend you starts to get thinner and thinner. And they discovered that in the sausage making industry. So the pig farmers were noticing that when they harvested the intestines for the casing for sausage, what used to be rubbery like a bicycle inner tube was now just ripping like cellophane. And that only happened when glyphosate was introduced to their feed.
Okay.
So they then lobbied and blocked the ability for glyphosate to be used in the pork industry anymore in the pig feed, but they still allow it in your food.
That's insane.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it's very sad.
It's very sad. It's very scary to me.
Michael, I just noticed I was so involved. I didn't realize it's 8:12. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's so fascinating. I could talk to you for 3 hours. I think we've actually done that before.
I know. We sign off. People don't realize that we stop the show, but we keep talking.
Yeah. Right? No, I know. Because it's so fascinating to me. So how do we wrap this up?
So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the health of your gut and you'd like some advice from me, I'd be happy to field a phone call with you. I always offer a free 15-minute phone consult to anyone on any topic, just to see if you have a problem that I might be able to give you some advice right there on the phone to help right away. Or if I think that there's something that I could do further for you, I, of course, would love to help you out. So if you'd like my help, you can contact me at my website, drwildcanhelp.com. And right on there, the first thing you're going to see is a blue button that says free phone consult. So take advantage of that. And after that consult, if we decide that maybe some of the testing we've been talking about tonight would be right for you, especially in regard to your intestinal function, I would invite you to take that stool test to look at your digestive ability and look at your microbiome, as well as possibly that. Sorry, Ralphie's saying hello. He knows we're getting to the end of
the show. I can't even stand it.
He's in my lap the whole time. Sorry.
He's so cute.
He's looking for me to walk him.
I know. He's like, I gotta go.
We also can book that.
I have a stool sample for you, Dad.
Yeah, I know he does. Right?
I know. Well, and the other thing, can you? I know I don't want people to feel these tests are expensive, because you have tests that are they're priced all over the map.
Right. I mean, we can check your whole body for systemic inflammation to see if your cells are breaking down at large and if you have underlying illness going on that you may not even know about. And that's a $20 urinalysis.
Yeah.
We can do a finger prick cell inflammation test to let me know very specifically what's going wrong at your cell membranes and if we have problems with hormones, and that's only $99. Yeah. So yeah, it's fairly inexpensive to find what's going on and to start fixing your problems. And if we need to go further, there can be more tests and the prices can vary, but we take it piece by piece. We don't, I don't run every test in the book and throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. We're very systematic about what we do, and we do what's appropriate for you as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just super important. It's very important to actually take that free consult just so Michael can guide you to the right tests, because there are a lot of them.
Right.
So that way you're kind of steered in the right direction. And he's amazing. And if you want to go look at Vtalks, and or you can go to my YouTube channel. We have so many episodes with Michael. Michael's been on every month for, I don't know, a year and a half, a long time.
I think, yeah.
I don't know how many episodes we've done with you, but it's been quite a few, right?
It has been. I know it's been at least a year, but time flies when we're having fun.
I know. Thank you so much, Michael. And I'll be in touch soon. I know we need to let Ralphie go give you a stool sample.
All right.
Bye, honey bunny. I'll see you next month. Okay. All right, okay. Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
All right. I appreciate you. Have a great night.
All right. You too. Bye.
Right, bye-bye.
All right, everybody. I'm sorry the show went long. I wasn't actually paying attention to the clock. I was just so interested in what Michael had to say, as I know all of you were. But please take advantage of this and go to Michael's website, drwildcanhelp.com, and contact him for a free consultation. It is so worth it. It doesn't matter where you live. I live in Massachusetts. Michael and I have never met in person. And he's my doctor. And the other thing too to remember is, our deductibles are so high anyway that this makes more sense, and it's a more targeted way to your healthcare, in my opinion. So, but anyway, thank you so much, and we will see you next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock on Vtalks. Thanks for tuning in. Be well. Bye.